The message arrived on a Tuesday. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the United Earth Defense Command Center, watching as the alien transmission played across the quantum displays. The beam on screen possessed iridescent scales and multiple eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern. Its voice translated through advanced AI systems into crisp English. People of Earth, the Galactic Concordat recognizes your achievement of reaching beyond your solar system. As per Protocol 7249, we offer you a choice: immediate submission to Concordat authority, or the alien's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. Correction. Sarah's jaw tightened as she studied the faces of her fellow military leaders gathered in the command center. General Torres from South American Command, Marshal Wong from the Asian Alliance, Colonel Okonjo representing the African Union. All wore expressions of grim determination. They had prepared for this day. The Concordat awaits your response, the alien continued. You have 48 Earth hours to submit your surrender. Any resistance will be met with immediate pacification. The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in tense silence. Well, Sarah said, allowing herself a slight smile, they certainly know how to make a first impression. Admiral, Colonel Okonjo spoke up, should we implement the Lazarus Protocol? Sarah nodded. For 15 years, ever since their quantum sensors had detected the first hints of alien civilizations, humanity had been preparing. While officially focusing on peaceful space exploration and colonial expansion, the Earth Defense Initiative had been developing technologies and strategies in secret. Execute Lazarus Protocol, Sarah commanded, and send our response to the Concordat. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, hidden facilities hummed to life. Quantum shield generators powered up around major cities. Stealth satellites emerged from their dormant states, and deep beneath the lunar surface, Project Phoenix awakened. The alien commander, Supreme Executor Vaxthal, received Earth's response with his secondary sensing organs twitching in anticipation. These primitive humans would surely recognize the futility of resistance. The message was brief. To the Galactic Concordat, humanity acknowledges your ultimatum. Our response is as follows: Earth does not surrender. Earth does not submit. You speak of correction. Come and try. Vaxthal's primary heart quickened with rage. How dare these primitives? Their scans showed minimal space defense capabilities, a handful of orbital stations, some basic particle weapons, nothing that could challenge even a single Concordat battle fleet. Deploy the pacification force, he commanded. Show these humans the price of defiance. The Concordat fleet emerged from quantum space near Earth's moon. 5,000 ships strong, it was vast overkill for subjugating a pre-spacefaring civilization. Vaxthal wanted to make an example of these upstart humans. But as the fleet moved into attack formation, their sensors detected something impossible. Quantum signatures were appearing throughout the system. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear. Supreme Executor, his sensor officer called out in alarm. Multiple unknown vessels materializing. They're everywhere. Vaxthal watched in growing horror as ships began appearing around his fleet. Not the crude vessels their intelligence had reported, but sleek predators of advanced design. They emerged from quantum bubbles that shouldn't have been possible with humanity's technology level. On the bridge of the EDS Hyperion, Admiral Chen watched the Concordat fleet's reaction with satisfaction. 15 years of preparation, she murmured. 15 years of letting them think we were primitive while we reversed engineered their quantum tech from sensor readings alone. And now, she keyed her comm system. To all Earth Defense Forces, execute Operation Reckoning. Show them humanity's answer to threats and ultimatums. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries as the day humanity announced itself to the galaxy. Not with submission or surrender, but with a display of technological achievement and military might that shattered all Concordat assumptions. The humans' quantum-shifted weapons bypassed Concordat shields completely. Their AI-driven combat systems adapted to alien tactics in real time, and their ships moved with impossible precision, as though the human pilots were one with their vessels through neural interfaces that the Concordat had never imagined possible. As his flagship's systems failed and alarms blared, Vaxthal finally understood. They had never been primitive. They had simply been patient, waiting, preparing, and now his arrogance had awakened a sleeping giant. The last thing he saw before his ship's quantum core breached was a transmission from the human admiral. "Welcome to Earth space, Supreme Executor. Consider this humanity's application to join the galactic community. We trust our qualifications are in order." The Concordat High Council chamber erupted in chaos as the news of Vaxthal's defeat spread. Councillor Zeneval, her crystalline form catching the light of the chamber's ancient quantum lamps, rose to address her fellow council members. "Impossible," she declared, her voice resonating through the neural networks connecting the assembled leaders. "No emergent civilization has ever rejected Concordat authority, and certainly none has defeated a pacification fleet." The Grand Arbiter, oldest among them, raised a tendril for silence. His ancient eyes studied the holographic replay of the battle. Human ships appearing from nowhere, their weapons cutting through the most advanced shields in known space, their tactics displaying a mastery of warfare that spoke of centuries of conflict. "We have made a grave error," the Arbiter announced. "These humans, they are not what we believe them to be." Intelligence suggested a fractious species, barely united, still fighting among themselves. Instead, we find them perfectly prepared for our arrival. Across the chamber, Councillor Drax of the militant faction slammed his war gauntlet on the ancient table. "Then we send the main fleet. Crush them before they can further develop their technologies. Show them, and any other species, that defiance means extinction." In Earth orbit, Admiral Chen watched the quantum sensor feeds with growing satisfaction. The Concordat's response to their defeat was exactly as predicted by the behavioral analysis AI. Their entire civilization was built on absolute authority, on the assumption of their technological superiority. Humanity's demonstration had shaken them to their core. "Status of Project Shadowfall," she asked her command staff. Colonel Okonjo brought up a holographic display showing thousands of tiny dots scattered throughout Concordat space. "All quantum infiltrators in position, Admiral. The viral AI packages are ready for deployment. On your command, we can disable their entire communication network." Sarah nodded, remembering the decades of careful planning that had led to this moment. While the Concordat watched Earth's surface for signs of military buildup, humanity's quantum-cloaked nanofactories had been seeding their territory with dormant weapons platforms. Every transmission they sent, every ship that passed near Earth, had been analyzed and reverse-engineered to create perfect countermeasures. "The Concordat main fleet is mobilizing," General Torres reported, his augmented eyes scanning multiple data streams simultaneously. 17,000 capital ships, plus support vessels. They're gathering at rally point Sigma 9, just as our deep cover probes predicted. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Send word to our allies." Throughout Concordat space, previously unknown quantum signatures began to appear. The Rikath, a species long thought extinct after refusing Concordat rule centuries ago, decloaked their massive world ships. The Zenari, officially a primitive client race, revealed city-sized vessels of bioorganic technology far beyond Concordat understanding. Humanity had spent years finding others who chafed under Concordat dominion, forming a shadow alliance that had waited for this precise moment. Multiple quantum ruptures detected. The sensor officer aboard the Concordat flagship announced in panic, "We're reading thousands of unknown vessels. Their energy signatures, impossible. Some of these ships are registering as ancient precursor tech." Supreme Commander Ixel, newly appointed after Vaxthal's defeat, watched in growing horror as his fleet found itself surrounded, not just by human vessels, but by ships of dozens of species, many of which were supposed to be either primitive or extinct. This was never about just defending Earth. He realized too late. They'd been planning a revolution. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Sarah received the quantum-encrypted transmission she'd been waiting for. The Concordat's own automated defense systems, infected by human viral AI, were turning against their masters. Quantum communication relays were going dark, cutting off Concordat worlds from central authority. "Send the ultimatum," she ordered. Throughout Concordat space, on every quantum channel still functioning, the message played, "To the Galactic Concordat, your time of absolute authority is ended. Your subject species are free. Your technological monopoly is broken. You have a choice. Adapt to a new galaxy of equals, or face extinction. Unlike you, we will give you time to consider your response. You have 24 hours. Sarah turned to her command staff, her expression grave but determined. "Now we wait. Either way, the galaxy changes forever after today." In the Concordat High Council chamber, the Grand Arbiter watched his civilization's carefully maintained order crumbling. These humans hadn't just defeated them militarily, they had completely undermined the very foundations of Concordat power. And they had done it without firing a shot at civilian targets, without wholesale slaughter. "Perhaps," he mused to the silent chamber, "it is time we learned from those we sought to subjugate. Perhaps it is time for the Concordat to evolve." The response timer continued counting down, and with it, the fate of a galaxy hung in the balance. The 24-hour deadline passed in tense silence. Throughout human and allied space, forces remained at high alert, quantum weapons primed and targeting systems locked on Concordat positions. But the expected counterattack never came. Instead, a single transmission reached Earth Defense Command, its quantum signature marking it as coming directly from the Grand Arbiter himself. "We request." There was a noticeable pause, as though the very words caused physical pain. "Negotiations." In the command center, Admiral Chen exchanged glances with her staff. This was an outcome they had hoped for, but hadn't dared count on. The Concordat's entire social structure was built on absolute authority. For them to accept negotiations meant fundamental change was already occurring. "Preparing for diplomatic contact," Sarah announced, "but maintain battle readiness. This could still be a trap." The chosen meeting point was Station Liberty, a massive space habitat that humanity had constructed in secret at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its quantum shields and weapon systems were cutting edge, but its true purpose was symbolic, a neutral ground where equals could meet. As the Concordat diplomatic vessel emerged from quantum space, sensors detected no hidden weapons or cloaked support ships. The Grand Arbiter had come alone, as agreed, a significant gesture of trust, or desperation. Sarah stood in the station's grand conference chamber, Earth visible as a distant blue jewel through the massive viewing windows. Beside her, representatives from the Shadow Alliance waited, the ethereal Urkaf, the bioengineered Zanari, and dozens of other species who had hidden their true capabilities from the Concordat for centuries. The Grand Arbiter entered, his ancient form moving with deliberate grace. His multiple eyes scanned the assembled representatives, lingering on species that his civilization had considered primitive or extinct. The reality of his civilization's failure was written in every face that looked back at him. "Before we begin," he said, his translated voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I must know. How? How did you accomplish all this without our knowledge?" Sarah smiled. "You saw what you expected to see. Your civilization's greatest weakness is its absolute certainty in its own superiority. While you watched for primitive weapons and monitored our official channels, we were building something far more powerful, unity." She gestured to the assembled aliens. "Every species here has something unique to offer. The Urkath's mastery of quantum mechanics, the Zanari's biotech, humanity's AI and neural interface systems. Instead of trying to dominate each other, we shared knowledge. We grew stronger together." The Arbiter's secondary appendages twitched in what might have been admiration. "And now, what do you intend to do with your victory?" "That depends on you," Sarah replied. "We don't want to destroy the Concordat. We want to transform it. No more forced submissions. No more primitive species, a true galactic community of equals. Impossible, one of the Arbiter's advisors burst out. The Concordat has maintained order for 10,000 years. Without our guidance, the galaxy would descend into chaos. A Rakath representative floated forward, its crystalline form shimming with internal light. Order through oppression is not order at all. It is merely delayed chaos. We offer a different path. As if on cue, quantum projectors activated, filling the space above the conference table with a holographic model of the galaxy. Points of light represented various civilizations, connected by pulsing lines of energy. A new network, Sarah explained, not built on dominance, but on mutual benefit. Trade routes, cultural exchange, shared defense, technology transfers, every species contributing their strengths, compensating for others' weaknesses. The Grand Arbiter studied the model intently. And if we refuse, then we activate the rest of our embedded systems, Sarah said quietly. The Concordat would not survive the day. But that is not what we want. You have built something remarkable. Flawed, but remarkable. Help us make it better. Hours stretched into days as negotiations continued. Throughout Concordat space, client species watched and waited. Some had already declared independence. Others remained loyal, waiting to see how their masters would respond to this unprecedented challenge. In orbit around Earth, the combined fleet of the Shadow Alliance remained vigilant. Human quantum sensors monitored every corner of known space for signs of treachery. But as the days passed, something extraordinary began to happen. Concordat worlds started voting on their status. Some chose independence. Others opted for new trade agreements. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic civilization for millennia began to flex and change. They're actually doing it, Colonel Okonjo remarked, watching the updates flow in. They're adapting. Sarah nodded, but kept her expression neutral. They're surviving. It's what successful species do. The question is, what form will that survival take? The answer would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity had not just won a military victory. They had catalyzed a social revolution that would affect trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. And this was just the beginning. 6 months after the negotiations began, the galaxy was experiencing growing pains. While many celebrated the dawn of a new era, others saw opportunity in the chaos. On the edges of former Concordat space, warlords and separatist factions emerged, attempting to carve out their own empires from the changing order. Admiral Sarah Chen stood aboard the EDS Hyperion, watching tactical displays track multiple ongoing conflicts. Status report on the Centauri incursion. The rogue Concordat fleet is pushing hard against the defensive line, General Torres replied, his neural implants streaming real-time battle data. They've gathered quite a following, mostly hardliners who refuse to accept the new accords. The tactical display showed a massive fleet of former Concordat warships, now painted in blood-red markings, advancing toward one of the newly independent systems. Their leader, a former high commander named Vexthor, had declared himself true arbiter and vowed to restore the old order. Sarah's expression hardened. This was the moment they had prepared for, the true test of whether the new Galactic Alliance could stand together against those who would drag it back into darkness. Send the signal, she commanded. Activate Protocol Unity. Across former Concordat space, quantum communications arrays lit up with encrypted transmissions. Ships of dozens of different species, many of whom had been bitter enemies mere months ago, began moving in perfect coordination. The rogue fleet encountered the first surprise at the Centauri boundary. What they had dismissed as primitive sensor buoys suddenly activated, revealing themselves as advanced quantum disruption fields. Hundreds of warships found their quantum drives suddenly offline, forcing them back into normal space. Quantum nets holding, Colonel Okonjo reported. Their fleet is contained within the designated zone. Allied forces moving into position. Through the quantum gates came ships of every description. Sleek human vessels with their devastating AI-driven weapon systems. Crystalline were Cath world ships that bent space itself. Zenari organic cruisers that adapted their very structure to counter enemy tactics. And most surprisingly, ships of the reformed Concordat, their traditional markings now bearing additional symbols of the new alliance. On his flagship, Vexthor watched in growing horror as his fleet was surrounded. Impossible. These lesser species cannot coordinate such complex military operations. This is Admiral Chen to all rogue Concordat forces. Sarah's voice echoed through every communication channel. Your advance stops here. The old order is dead. You can either adapt to the new reality or be confined to the dustbin of history. Choose carefully. The battle that followed would be remembered as the defining moment of the galaxy's transformation. The combined fleet demonstrated something unprecedented. True cooperation between diverse species, each contributing their unique strengths to a greater whole. Human AI systems coordinated the overall battle strategy, processing information at speeds no organic mind could match. Orcath quantum technologies provided perfect real-time communication between all allied ships. Zenari biotech adapted to and countered every rogue tactic, and reformed Concordat forces provided intimate knowledge of their former comrades' strategies. Their breaking formation. Tor is announced as the rogue fleet began to fracture under the relentless assault. Multiple ships are powering down weapons. They're surrendering. Sarah nodded grimly. Broadcast on all frequencies. To all surrendering vessels. Power down your weapons and quantum drives. You will be boarded and your crews treated according to the new accords. This is the face of the future, not conquest, but cooperation. Not dominance, but unity in diversity. As the last rogue ships surrendered, representatives from every major species gathered aboard Station Liberty. The Grand Arbiter, now serving as one voice among equals on the new Galactic Council, addressed the assembly. Today marks the true beginning of our new era, he declared. We have faced our first major challenge and emerged stronger. Not through the might of any one species, but through the combined strength of all. Sarah watched from her position among the human delegation as species that had once been mortal enemies now worked together to process prisoners and restore order to the affected systems. It was messy, complicated, and far from perfect, but it was real progress. The hard part's just beginning, Colonel Okonjo remarked quietly. Building is always harder than breaking. True, Sarah agreed. But for the first time, we're all building together. That makes all the difference. As the Hyperion prepared to leave the cleanup operation, Sarah received a quantum transmission from Earth Command. New anomalous signals had been detected from beyond the galaxy's edge. Something vast and ancient was stirring in the void, perhaps drawn by the recent conflicts. She smiled grimly. The galaxy had changed forever, but change brought new challenges. Whatever was out there, humanity and its allies would face it together. The age of standing alone was over. The real question was, what would they build from here? 1 year after the Battle of Centauri, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The quantum signals from beyond the galactic rim had grown stronger, and with them, a sense of destiny swept through allied space. Whatever was coming, it would find not a collection of divided species, but a unified civilization ready to face any challenge. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the newly completed Chamber of Worlds, a massive space station at the galaxy's heart that served as the seat of the United Species Council. The chamber itself was a marvel of combined technologies, quantum engineered by the Rikath, grown from living crystal by the Zenari, enhanced by human eye, and built with Concordat precision. The deep space arrays have finished their analysis, Colonel Okonjo reported, his neural implants projecting the data directly into the chamber's holographic systems. The signals, their precursor in origin, but different from any we've encountered before. The assembled council representatives stirred at this news. The precursors, the mysterious species that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind scattered ruins and incomprehensible technologies, had long been a subject of study and speculation. "Show us," the Grand Arbiter requested, his voice carrying the weight of one who had seen his entire worldview transformed in the space of a year. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive structure moving through the intergalactic void. It defied conventional physics, its very existence seeming to bend reality around it, and it was headed directly for the Milky Way. "We're detecting quantum communications from the object," Sarah announced. "They're testing us." "Explain," demanded the Zenari representative, her bioorganic form shifting with curiosity. "The signals contain problems. Mathematical, philosophical, technological, each more complex than the last. They're not just measuring our scientific advancement. They're measuring our ability to work together to find solutions." A Werkath elder floated forward, its crystalline form resonating with excitement. "The ancient texts speak of this. The Great Test. The precursors were said to seed galaxies with life, then return to evaluate their creation's progress. And what happened to those who failed the test?" someone asked. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Sarah stepped forward. "A year ago, we proved that different species could overcome their prejudices and work together. We showed that cooperation is stronger than dominance. Now we face an even greater challenge, one that will test not just our technology or our military might, but our very capacity for unity and understanding." She gestured to the holographic display, where the precursor object continued its inexorable approach. "We have 6 months before they arrive. I propose we show them exactly what this galaxy is capable of when we work together." What followed was the greatest cooperative endeavor in galactic history. Species that had once been bitter enemies now shared their deepest secrets and most advanced technologies. The Concordat's vast knowledge archives were open to all. Human AI systems worked alongside Werkath quantum computers to decipher the precursor signals. Zenari biotechnology evolved to interface with mechanical systems in ways previously thought impossible. Station Liberty, where the first negotiations had taken place, was transformed into a massive research and development complex. Every solved problem revealed new layers of complexity in the precursor tests, pushing the allied species to ever greater achievements. "They're not just testing our current capabilities," Sarah realized one day, watching teams of mixed species working seamlessly together. "They're pushing us to evolve, to become something greater than the sum of our parts." 3 months before the precursor arrival, they achieved their first breakthrough. The combined team managed to replicate a small-scale version of the reality-bending technology the precursor object used. 2 months later, they established two-way quantum communication with the approaching vessel. The message they received in return shook the galaxy to its core. "You have exceeded expectations. Phase 1 complete. Prepare for integration." In the Chamber of Worlds, Sarah addressed the assembled representatives of every known species. "Whatever happens next will determine not just our future, but the future of countless galaxies to come. We've proven that we're stronger together than apart. Now it's time to show the precursors that their faith in us was not misplaced." The precursor vessel arrived on the exact day their calculations had predicted. As it took up position near the Chamber of Worlds, its impossible geometry somehow fitting perfectly into normal space, every being in the galaxy held their breath. What followed would be remembered for millennia as the day the galaxy truly came of age. The precursors revealed themselves not as judges or conquerors, but as guides who had waited eons for a civilization capable of joining them in stewarding the universe itself. "We seeded this galaxy with life," their first direct communication explained, "hoping that evolution would eventually produce species capable of transcending their individual limitations through genuine cooperation. You have succeeded where countless others failed." Sarah stood with representatives of every allied species as the precursors shared their true purpose: to create a network of civilizations capable of maintaining the very fabric of reality itself. The universe, they explained, needed conscious beings working in harmony to survive and evolve. "So," she said, looking out at the assembled representatives of her galaxy, Shall we show them what humanity and its allies can really do? The response was unanimous. The galaxy that had nearly torn itself apart in war now stood united, ready to take its place among the guardians of creation itself. As the integration began, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity had not only survived first contact, they had helped forge something greater than anyone could have imagined. The future stretched out before them, infinite in its possibilities, and they would face it together. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun.